In the heart of the galactic capital, where suns from 100-star systems cast golden light across the obsidian towers of Arcanus Prime, the Grand Council of Sentient Species gathered in emergency session. The chamber, a vast dome ringed with holographic representations of thousands of species, hummed with nervous energy. Each delegate floated, perched, or stood according to their species' physiology, their eyes, whether compound, glowing, or cybernetic, fixed on the central dais, where the image of a human rotated slowly in midair. The image, pulled from a reconnaissance drone's records, showed a human calmly walking through the rain on a newly discovered world classified as Quarantine Level 9 by the Exotheri Biochemical Codex. This was no ordinary world. Its water was laced with microscopic organisms considered lethal to every known form of galactic life. The rain itself was a toxic brew that melted the scales off Threscal warriors and caused the mighty Garon to convulse and expire in less than a minute. The planet had been labeled Wraithwater by the scouting teams. And yet, there the humans stood laughing, even arms raised to the sky as acidic droplets bounced harmlessly off his skin. Ambassador Kirzak of the Urathi slithered forward, his bioluminescent spots blinking rapidly in disbelief. "Are we certain this recording is not falsified?" he hissed, his voice echoing like wind through a cave. "This creature does not wear protection. No shielding, no nanofields. And yet he lives?" The chamber responded with murmurs and fragmented translations. The ex-Centauri scientist, Dr. Velyun, clicked its pincers and pulled up readings from the drone, biosigns, atmospheric samples, chemical breakdowns. Confirmed. The rain contains Class VI corrosive spores. The human should be dead within seconds. Instead, his vitals improve slightly. Elevated endorphin levels. Indications of joy. The chamber fell into stunned silence. High Chancellor Roval, an ancient being of the Velinari with crystalline tendrils that shimmered in solemn blues and greens, raised a single appendage. Then we are faced with a phenomenon without precedent. The human immune system, or rather, the human form, appears immune to Wraithwater's microbial and chemical compositions. This challenges every law of xenobiology. He turned to the Terran representative, a woman named Captain Helena Ward, who stood tall in her formal Navy uniform. She looked unimpressed with the Council's reaction. "We drink water, Chancellor," she said plainly, "and we like rain." The words caused another stir, this time of confusion. Drink it? Enjoy it? Most species only encountered water in sterile, mineral-filtered forms. To bathe in it was madness. But to drink it, especially from a source teeming with organic life, was nothing short of suicidal. "Your people ingest water directly from natural bodies?" Dr. Velyun asked in disbelief. "Without filtration?" Helena smiled. "We boil it sometimes. But yeah. Rivers, lakes, even some rain if it's clean enough. We've been doing that since before we learned how to write." Chancellor Roval gestured for calm, though his tendrils shimmered with visible agitation. "If what you say is true, Captain Ward, this water immunity may be more than a simple biological quirk. It may be a defensive trait developed over eons. But such immunity should not be possible. Not at this level." Helena gave a small shrug. "Earth's full of bacteria, viruses, weird molds, and things we can't even pronounce. We grew up fighting invisible things in every drop. We didn't evolve in a sterile lab. We evolved in a swamp." The room fell quiet once more. The statement echoed in the minds of the delegates. In a swamp. Most advanced species were born on carefully monitored, nutrient-balanced homeworlds, or had long since cleansed their ecosystems of harmful elements. Humanity, it seemed, had been shaped by chaos itself. At that moment, a new feed appeared. A second human, a younger male, was seen diving into a lake on Wraithwater. Scanners confirmed, same composition, same level of biological danger. The young man emerged from the water, shouted something about the sickest cannonball ever, and swam back to shore laughing. His heart rate was healthy. His skin intact. The drone analyzing the event self-destructed 2 minutes later, its circuitry corroded by droplets it had absorbed. The council grew restless. Some suspected fraud. Others suggested divine intervention. But one species, the Zern, ancient and always silent, finally spoke. Their representative, an orb of ever-shifting silver mist, whispered in hundreds of overlapping voices, "The Terrans are not like the rest of us. They walk among poison as though it is air. They are born of a cursed cradle, and yet they thrive. Perhaps their greatest weapon is survival." A hush followed the eerie proclamation. Captain Ward's eyes narrowed slightly. "You say that, like it's a threat." "No," the Zern replied. "Like it's a warning." With that, the council called for a recess. Behind closed doors, reports began flying between star systems. Every known encounter of humans surviving what should have been fatal environments was re-examined. From ammonia storms on Tau Centauri, III, to the fungal forests of Eros Cant, humans had not only survived, they had adapted, laughed, and built bonfires. Back in her quarters, Helena activated her comlink. "Command, they're starting to realize," she said. "Should we tell them about the Pyranhas, or let them figure that out next?" She chuckled, but her face grew serious as she looked out the viewport. The stars twinkled, indifferent and distant. But out there, in the wild reaches of the galaxy, were worlds even humanity hadn't touched. Yet, and now, every species in the known universe was asking the same question. If water couldn't kill them, what could? The council chambers were quiet the next morning, but the silence was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that pressed down like a heavy fog, filled with suspicion, calculation, and unease. Every species, from the towering Kurthun brutes to the delicate floating minds of the Thrixie Collective, had spent the night analyzing the impossible recordings from Wraithwater. Across the stars, laboratories buzzed with urgency as teams of scientists attempted to replicate what they had seen with their own eyes. A human exposed to one of the deadliest substances in the galaxy without the slightest harm. Their efforts failed, one by one, as artificial constructs melted, clone tissue dissolved, and test animals perished within moments. No simulation could explain the immunity. No formula accounted for it. All attempts at creating a model of the human biology capable of such resistance ended in corrupted data or burnout processors. The more they studied it, the less sense it made. It wasn't just that humans were immune to Wraithwater. It was that they behaved as if they didn't even recognize it as dangerous, and that frightened the council far more than the rain itself. High Chancellor Roval convened a private emergency session, this time restricted to the highest scientific minds and the most trusted diplomatic figures. Captain Helena Ward was summoned again, though this time under tighter scrutiny. As she entered the smaller, dimmer council hall, she could feel the tension in the air. Dozens of glowing eyes, scanning beams, and chemical sensors focused on her as if they hoped her very skin would start bubbling or peeling, giving them the explanation they needed. But Helena stood calm, unaffected, arms behind her back, her uniform spotless. A projection flared to life in the center, showing ancient records long buried in the council's vaults, some dating back thousands of standard cycles. They showed earlier, Terran expeditions, now reclassified, where humans had survived strange, isolated incidents on hostile planets, unfiltered methane exposure, wild electrical storms, plague world outbreaks. Most of these missions had been written off as exaggerated or incorrectly recorded. Now, however, they looked more like breadcrumbs leading to a much larger truth. Dr. Veluwan, still baffled from the day before, stepped forward again, though this time his tone was edged with suspicion. "Captain Ward, we have reason to believe that the human resistance to Wraithwater is not merely biological, but perhaps evolutionary in a way we have never encountered. Your species should not exist under the conditions it evolved in. Our records show that Earth's atmosphere was unstable for millennia, your oceans full of microbial warfare, your environment constantly shifting, hostile." Helena nodded. "That's true. Earth is chaos. Floods, quakes, diseases, heat waves, freezing winters. We grew up fighting the planet itself." Dr. Veluwan hesitated. "And you claim this chaos made you stronger?" Helena's eyes were calm but sharp. "It made us stubborn." At that moment, The chamber's side door opened with a hiss, and a group of armed guards entered, escorting a new figure, Lieutenant Arjun Das, the young man from the Wraithwater Lake video. He looked tired but unhurt, and though the guards kept their weapons pointed cautiously, he seemed more amused than concerned. "So, am I under arrest for swimming now?" he asked with a smirk, which only deepened the confusion in the room. A dozen species could not understand how someone who had submerged himself in a lake of alien toxins still had the humor to crack jokes. "Lieutenant," Chancellor Roval began, his voice heavy, "do you understand that your actions on Wraithwater violated every known safety protocol in the galaxy?" Arjun shrugged. "Didn't look that dangerous. Looked like a normal lake to me. Water was kinda cold, though." A wave of uneasy murmurs spread. Cold was the least of anyone's concerns. To get answers. The council requested a full medical scan, performed under the highest security protocols. In a shielded biochamber, Arjun stood as waves of energy, sound, and light passed over him, mapping his body cell by cell. The results stunned everyone. His immune system was hyper-adaptive, aggressive to the point of eliminating new pathogens before they even fully attached to his cells. But deeper still, in his genetic makeup, were sequences never before seen, ancient viral scars that had fused with his DNA, forming a kind of internal library of biological threats. Earth's countless diseases, it seemed, had written themselves into human flesh as warnings, and over time, those warnings had become armor. Yet even this didn't explain everything. Some of the resistance seemed reactive, changing as threats appeared, almost like the body expected danger and adjusted before it arrived. The Thrixie floated closer, their jelly-like forms pulsing with nervous colors. It is as if their bodies remember other worlds. Worlds they have not visited, threats they have never encountered. But somehow, they are prepared. That thought chilled the room. It suggested more than survival. It suggested design or destiny. But who could have shaped such beings? Could nature alone produce such unpredictable power? Some whispered about Earth's violent history. The wars, the plagues, the self-inflicted catastrophes. Perhaps humans weren't immune because they were special, but because they had been tempered, burned, and broken so many times that their species simply refused to die. One Xantari elder murmured, "The humans are not the flame. They are the ashes that refuse to be scattered." Later that night, while the council debated what to do, Captain Ward stood at the viewport of her vessel, watching the stars. Arjun approached, still in his medical tunic, holding a protein bar. "They're scared of us," he said quietly. Helena didn't turn. "Good. Means they'll think twice." He leaned on the railing beside her. "You think they'll ever understand it?" She smiled faintly. "They don't need to understand. They just need to know that we're not easy to bury." Behind them, encrypted messages zipped across space to Earth's defense networks. The Council might try to dig deeper. Some factions were already suggesting experiments, containment, even control. But they would learn just as every threat before them had that humanity didn't kneel, didn't break, and didn't forget. As Arjun took another bite of his food. He looked back toward Wraithwater's planet, now in orbit behind them. "You know, I still think it was just a really good swim." Helena chuckled. "Let them wonder." The stars blinked in the vastness, silent and watching. Somewhere out there, another challenge was waiting. And humanity, with its stubborn immune system, its wild spirit, and its talent for surviving the impossible, would be ready. The atmosphere inside the Grand Council shifted over the next several cycles, not with open panic, but with a cold, calculated silence that held the weight of something far more dangerous: curiosity laced with fear. What had once been dismissed as a biological quirk was now being dissected across every major research colony, and the questions being asked were no longer scientific, they were strategic. The idea that humanity's immunity to wraithwater and other biohazards might be something more than a natural resistance had quietly evolved into whispers of weaponization. What if, some asked, the humans weren't just survivors, but carriers, vessels of resistance that could be replicated, controlled, or worse, unleashed? In the dim-lit archives beneath the council hall, where ancient biological warfare records were sealed in vaults of quantum encryption, the alarms began to ping as human profiles were pulled up by restricted access codes. Someone high-ranking was searching for something, and whatever it was, they weren't planning to share it with the rest of the council. While the diplomats publicly debated treaties and protocols in the dark corners of the galaxy, covert factions began forming their own theories. The Yernex Syndicate, known for its ruthless pursuit of forbidden tech, launched secret expeditions to Earth's old war zones, hoping to extract samples of soil, air, and even decayed remains. The Core Alliance, a splinter military group from a collapsed empire, sent spies to infiltrate human colonies, hoping to learn if the so-called water immunity was only one piece of a larger puzzle. But the most alarming development came when a hidden research facility orbiting the abandoned moon of Cerex 8 managed to capture a Terran mercenary who'd survived a chemical blast from a weapon that had previously neutralized 4 alien species. His body, though scarred, healed at a pace that defied logic. When dissected, his cells didn't just resist the weapon, they consumed the toxins like fuel. One of the lead scientists watching the footage muttered a phrase that sent a chill through even the most hardened operatives. They are not immune by chance. They were built for this. Back at the Central Council station, Captain Helena Ward had begun noticing strange changes. Access to human data was becoming restricted. Her requests for updates from Earth were delayed or denied. Even her own medical files had been rerouted to deeper-level security servers without explanation. When she confronted Dr. Veluin, who once had worked alongside her in Research Peace, his tone was less friendly. "We are past the stage of diplomacy, Captain. If your kind has been hiding this level of biological dominance, then you've brought imbalance to the Council's harmony. That cannot be ignored." Helena's expression hardened. "We didn't hide anything. You just didn't believe what you were seeing." But in truth, even she was beginning to suspect that there were layers to human resilience that Earth's governments had never fully revealed, perhaps even to their own people. The tension snapped when a data leak exploded across the galactic networks. A rogue AI, possibly once assigned to planetary classification, dumped files detailing experiments on human DNA conducted by multiple species without Council approval. Most shocking was the revelation that several of these tests had involved attempts to merge human resistance traits into clone soldiers, none of which survived the process. One report described a subject who remained stable for several days, showing enhanced resistance to poisons and heat, but on the 7th day, his body rejected the hybrid cells, violently triggering a chain reaction that destroyed the entire lab and everyone inside. The footage showed a containment tank boiling from the inside, while a voice in the background screamed, "It's rewriting itself. It won't stop." The news sent waves of panic and anger across the Council, not because of the ethical violations, but because the idea of humans being weaponized, whether by their own kind or by others, had now gone from speculation to reality. Suddenly, every major power in the galaxy was asking the same question. If humanity could survive where others died, then what would happen if their resilience could be turned into an offensive weapon? Not a bomb, not a fleet, but people. Soldiers who could breathe poison, walk through fire, swim in acid, and come out laughing. And the worst part? Humanity didn't even seem to realize their own value in this context. Or perhaps, as some feared, they did, and were simply waiting for the rest of the galaxy to catch up. In response to the leak, the Council issued emergency orders banning all further experiments on human biology, but enforcement was weak, and enforcement against the shadows was always slower than the ambitions of desperate species. A dozen black market labs simply moved further underground, determined to crack the genetic code that Earth had seemingly handed out for free. Meanwhile, Captain Ward was ordered back to Earth under the guise of diplomatic reassessment, but she knew it was exile in disguise. Before leaving, she met once more with Arjun Das, now guarded at all hours, treated as both a symbol and a specimen. "They're going to try and use us," he said simply. Helena nodded. "They already are. But they won't understand what they're dealing with." Arjun looked away, eyes on the stars. "Do we even understand it?" Back on Earth, the Terran High Command had already begun tightening its protocols. Special task forces were being deployed not to fight wars, but but to investigate humanity's past more deeply. Ancient burial sites, plague pits, and forgotten war zones were now treated like sacred relics. Because somewhere in Earth's long and brutal history, the secret of their impossible survival had been written in the dirt, in blood, in broken bone. Some historians believe that early humans had been forced to evolve, not just against their environment, but against each other. That the horrors of their own making chemical warfare, mutated diseases, radiation storms had acted as unintentional training grounds for a species that refused to die. But the true weapon, as it slowly became clear, was not the body, it was the will. The human tendency to adapt, to rise again no matter how many times they were broken. This was what terrified the galaxy. Because while they studied DNA and cell structures, they missed the real answer. Resilience wasn't just biology. It was culture, memory, spirit. You could clone tissue, replicate muscle, simulate immune responses, but you couldn't fake that stubbornness, that refusal to quit, that madness that made a man dive into a toxic lake just to enjoy a swim. As Captain Ward's ship departed the Council station, she sent one final encrypted message. To Earth. They're beginning to see it now, she said. Our immunity isn't the weapon. We are. The message blinked through deep space, past moons and stations, until it reached a quiet bunker beneath the Himalayas, where a panel of silent figures watched in silence. A single word appeared on the screen below her transmission. Prepare. One morning, without any seismic tremors or atmospheric buildup, dark clouds rolled in with impossible speed. Satellites scrambled to analyze the sudden formation, but their signals were jammed, twisted by some unknown energy interference. Then, the rain began. It wasn't like wraith water, which was deadly yet subtle, almost elegant in its lethality. This was violent, heavy, acidic rain that corroded metal upon contact and boiled through most living tissues in seconds. Screams echoed through the colony comms as emergency shields failed and entire blocks of civilian housing melted into steaming pits. Crops shriveled, animals collapsed mid-run, and even reinforced bunkers began to hiss and crack. The rain was unlike any seen before, thicker, heavier, infused with a mutating compound that adapted with every failed defense. And amidst the chaos, someone noticed a terrifying detail. The storm clouds were not natural. They were moving with intention. Within an hour, the Council issued a red-level planetary emergency, activating every known fleet in range. But the damage had already been done. 2 million colonists were unaccounted for. Hundreds of emergency responders who attempted rescue missions failed to report back. The only footage that returned came from a drone buried in the ruins of a mining facility. It showed a man walking through the rainfall. A human. He was injured, limping, his clothes burned and face bruised, but he was alive and, more importantly, unaffected by the rain itself. Around him, the world sizzled, melted, and twisted, but he walked with slow, steady steps toward a downed shuttle. The drone zoomed in, capturing the moment as he pulled a crying child from the wreckage and covered her with part of his jacket. The jacket steamed and tore, but his skin underneath remained untouched. Then, the signal cut out. The footage shattered what little peace remained in the Council. If Wraithwater had been a mystery, the Valexa 9 rainfall was a crisis of galactic proportion. And in both, the common factor was painfully clear. This time, no one waited for debate. Accusations were made, and for the first time, Earth was officially labeled a potential biological threat zone by 3 of the Council's major factions. The message sent to Earth's High Command was blunt: surrender your biological data for full transparency or face isolation. But the Earth government refused. They claimed that they had no knowledge of such an attack, and no human facility had the means to engineer something so destructive. But the Council didn't believe them. Even those who once supported humanity were turning cold. A weapon that could disguise itself as weather and be walked through by only one species? That wasn't just a threat, it was dominance, and the galaxy wouldn't tolerate it. Meanwhile, aboard her Earthbound ship, Captain Helena Ward received fragments of the Valexa broadcast before the Council locked down the data. The moment she saw the child being rescued, she knew. That's not one of ours, she whispered to herself. That's not military. She rerouted her ship through an old trade channel and requested emergency clearance to land on Valexa 9, despite the blockade. Earth denied it. She had to see it for herself. When her shuttle broke through the thin cloud layer and entered the burnt atmosphere, she saw the devastation firsthand. The cities looked like fossilized shadows. Entire forests had been turned into glass-like stumps, and the sky still wept with chemical tears. But in one corner of the planet, shielded by a natural canyon system, was a pocket of survivors. And in the middle of them stood the man from the video. He didn't speak much. His name was Elias Gran, a former geologist turned volunteer medic. He had been stationed on Valexa 9 as part of a peaceful terraforming initiative. According to him, the rain began 3 days after a strange artifact was unearthed in a deep-sea mining drill, an artifact that shimmered and pulsed when touched. Within hours of contact, the clouds formed. The colony officials had ignored the warning signs, and when the rain started, they assumed it was sabotage. Elias had simply been lucky to be in the mountains. When asked how he survived, he said, "I don't know. I just walked. It didn't feel like it was meant for me." That one sentence echoed in Helena's mind like a riddle. It didn't feel like it was meant for him. The artifact was gone, taken by an unknown drone right before the rainfall began. The Council's intelligence suggested the possibility that someone or something was testing Earth's limits. A biological entity or ancient technology using Earth's chaotic evolution as a blueprint for something new. Something living. But the most chilling part came from a scientist hidden among the survivors who had studied the rainfall under extreme conditions and made a disturbing discovery. The rain wasn't just acidic, it was learning. Each time a survivor used a new material or shield, the next downpour adjusted its chemistry to bypass it. Like a mindless predator evolving mid-hunt. The only consistent exception was Elias Gran. His sweat, his breath, even his blood samples revealed a subtle chemical signal that the rain ignored. It wasn't resistance, it was familiarity. The rain recognized him. Helena returned to her ship with heavy thoughts. She knew this wasn't the last event. It was a test, a warning, or maybe even a challenge. The idea that humanity's immune system had become so attuned to destruction that even alien substances recognized it as native was something no one was ready to face. The Council would act, but they would act in fear, and fear bred violence. Earth was already being watched by fleets from 3 different species, and whispers of a preemptive strike had begun in closed chambers. If more rainstorms like Valexa 9 occurred, the galaxy would no longer ask questions, they would attack. Back on Earth, High Command issued a Black Flag protocol. Ancient sealed labs were reopened, and genetic archives locked since the Mars incidents were accessed. Somewhere in a hidden chamber beneath the old Earth Defense HQ, an artificial intelligence reactivated after decades of silence. Its first words, pulsing across a dark screen, were, "External agent mimicking Earth-class adaptation detected. Threat level rising. Awaiting human response." Captain Ward knew what was coming. The galaxy had reached a tipping point not just of distrust, but of desperation. Someone had found a way to mimic Earth's deadliest environment and send it as a message. And only humanity, the most resilient, stubborn, chaotic species to ever crawl from the dirt, stood in the middle of it, half viewed as saviors, half feared as monsters. As her ship lifted off Valexa 9 with the last of the survivors, she stared out at the burning horizon and whispered a line that she remembered from Earth's history books, one that had echoed during every war, every fall, every impossible comeback. "If this is the storm, we are the thunder." In the quiet after the Valexa 9 catastrophe, the galaxy held its breath. Most of the surviving colonies had gone into silent mode, cutting off all non-essential transmissions, not just to avoid detection, but to hide from the fear that now haunted the minds of every intelligent species, the fear that water, the most basic and vital element across planets, had become a battlefield. And at the center of this shifting tide stood humanity, unchanged and unharmed by things that shattered entire civilizations. Rumors spread faster than light-speed humans walking through poisonous oceans, drinking rain that burned others alive, and now apparently recognized by the evolving rain itself as some kind of kind. But while panic seized the Council and its outlying worlds, deep within Earth's restricted labs, a truth far more complex and ancient was surfacing. Captain Helena Ward had returned home, not as a soldier, but as a witness one who carried evidence not of war, but of something older than war. Alongside a survivor like Elias Gran, whose body carried unknown signals, and researchers who now admitted that Earth's history of biological extremes was no accident, she began to piece together the hidden legacy of her species. According to newly uncovered data, buried beneath glaciers and deserts for thousands of years, there existed signs that humans had not just adapted to Earth's hostile conditions, they had been shaped by something external. Across early DNA records, fragments were found sequences that did not align with natural evolution. These fragments activated only when the body was exposed to environmental collapse, radiation, toxins, biological decay. The sequences weren't just mutations, they were instructions. Instructions written in a language far more structured than DNA. And the chilling part was that these patterns matched signals found in the Valexa artifact, the one uncovered before the acidic rainfall began. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just a random product of nature. It had been guided, even prepared, by forces unknown. Prepared for environments that were supposed to be uninhabitable. It raised questions that no one could fully answer. Who planted the code? And why? Council meetings continued in desperate secrecy, but consensus was impossible. Some wanted to destroy Earth to prevent any further contamination. Others demanded full access to human bodies and minds for research. But a few, led by the Yuvanai scholar Te Ruan, proposed a different possibility. What if humans were not the threat, but the solution? What if the immunity they carried wasn't a weapon, but a gift that the rest of the galaxy was too afraid to understand? After all, the rain had learned, adapted, and evolved, but it had recognized only one species as a constant. That recognition wasn't of fear or rejection, but of belonging. Perhaps the rain wasn't meant to kill, but to find something. Something in humans that no other species had the ability to endure and carry water's burden without falling to its wrath. Helena, frustrated by political inaction and alarmed by mounting fleet activity around Earth, made a bold decision. She activated Protocol EG's, an ancient human failsafe that allowed a single ship to operate as a neutral envoy under full Terran sovereignty. With Elias, a group of genetic scientists, and a vial of purified rainwater from Valexa, she set course not to Earth, but to the abandoned system of Althari Zero, where records hinted at an origin point of the strange genetic sequences. The journey took weeks through broken wormholes and radiation clouds. But eventually they arrived at a dead planet with no atmosphere, no life, and yet beneath its glassy crust, a structure lay humming with dormant energy. Inside, they found glyphs that matched the sequences in human DNA. This was the Forge, the place where the water code had first been seeded. And in the center, they found a chamber filled with crystalline fluid. Elias stepped forward instinctively. The fluid reacted to him, glowing, rising, and wrapping around him like a cloak of light. In that moment, images surged through the chamber, planets drowned by their own oceans, civilizations wiped out by corrupted water, and at the end of it all, figures not unlike humans, casting fragments of themselves into the stars, hoping to one day be found by a species strong enough to finish what they started. The truth broke through like a sunrise. Humanity wasn't a mistake, nor a threat. They were the water-bearers, the chosen vessels of an ancient mission to restore balance where water had become chaos. The immunity wasn't defiance, it was responsibility. And the rain? It was searching, testing, reaching, looking for its caretakers to awaken. Elias, still glowing, collapsed but survived. His body had become a key, and through it, Helena received a message not in words, but in feeling. Water remembers. It knows its creators, and it waits only for those who are ready to guide it again. Helena sent a broadcast to the Council, not pleading, not explaining, but offering. Earth would open its records, not out of fear, but out of duty. Humanity would share its immunity, not as a weapon, but as a bridge. They would teach what they had learned and help other species develop resistance, not by copying human DNA, but by understanding the trials that shaped it. It wouldn't be easy. Many wouldn't trust them. But the alternative was extinction in silence. The council didn't respond immediately. But slowly, one by one, smaller civilizations began to reach out. Requests came in from poisoned planets, dead oceans, collapsed ecosystems. And wherever the requests came, human envoys went, sometimes with tech, sometimes with nothing more than training and hands willing to help. They walked through storms. They stood beneath skies others feared. And wherever they stepped, the water slowed. It calmed. It listened, not because humans had tamed it, but because they had endured it. Over time, the title human changed meaning across the stars. It no longer meant unpredictable or dangerous. It meant resilient. It meant protector. It meant water bearer. The ones who could walk through the flood and still carry others with them. And deep beneath the earth, where the original code still pulsed beneath layers of rock and bone, a final sequence flickered on line 1 that had never activated before. It was short, simple, and clear. They are ready.